July 1985. The Israeli government freezes wages, freezes prices, and pegs the shekel to a fixed basket of foreign currencies, all on the same afternoon. Inflation running north of 400%, annualized collapses within months, not years. No context yet, just the date, the mechanism, the number. Behold the terminal readout. In 1984, Israeli inflation hit 445% for the year, not a projection, a recorded fact. Shimon Peres inherited a treasury that was functionally insolvent, a fiscal deficit sitting near 15% of GDP, financed the only way a government in that position can finance anything: the Bank of Israel printing shekels to cover the gap. This was not incompetence in the ordinary sense. It was architecture. Israeli wages, rents, and even bank deposits were formally indexed to inflation, readjusted monthly, then weekly as the crisis deepened. Indexation was sold in the 1970s as protection for workers against price erosion. By 1984, it had become the transmission mechanism for the disease itself. Prices rose, wages adjusted upward to match, businesses raised prices again to cover the new wage bill, and the loop closed on itself with no external force required to keep it spinning. Israel had already tried to break this once. In 1980, the government retired the old lira and introduced the shekel outright, a currency reform meant to signal a fresh start. It failed to touch the underlying mechanism. You cannot fix a printing press by renaming the paper. So by mid-1985, two men who agreed on almost nothing else, Shimon Peres of Labour and Yitzhak Shamir of Likud, sat inside the same unity government cabinet and signed off on the same emergency plan. Not because of ideological convergence, because the alternative was a currency that no longer functioned as a store of value for anyone, including the politicians themselves. Here is what the Economic Stabilization Plan actually did, mechanically, in order. First, the fiscal shock. Government subsidies on basic goods were slashed. Public spending was cut before the currency peg was even announced, so that when the peg landed, it had fiscal cover behind it rather than standing alone as a bet against the market. Second, the freeze. Wages, prices, and the exchange rate were locked simultaneously on the same date with no phase-in period. This is the detail almost every failed stabilization attempt in Latin America got wrong in the same decade. They froze prices but let wages float, or froze the exchange rate while deficits kept running. Israel froze all three components at once. Third, the peg itself. The shekel was pegged to a basket of currencies, weighted toward the US dollar, at a rate that had already been devalued going in. This is the part that gets missed. The peg was not set at an aspirational, strong rate meant to signal confidence. It was set at a rate deliberately weak enough to be defensible, because a peg that requires constant intervention to prop up an unrealistic exchange rate collapses the moment reserves run low. And fourth, external validation. The United States backed the plan with emergency financial support, effectively co-signing Israel's credibility at a moment when the Bank of Israel's own reserves could not have defended the peg alone against a determined speculative run. Why did this work in 1985 and not before? Because the political veto points that normally block this kind of shock were temporarily removed. The Histadrut, Israel's dominant labor federation, had blocked wage restraint for years under normal political conditions, because normal conditions gave it leverage to do so. Economic collapse removed that leverage. A single-party government facing an opposition benefiting from its failure would have been vetoed at every stage. A unity government facing collective collapse had no opposition left to perform the veto. But breaking inflation on paper and breaking it in people's expectations are two different problems. Inflation is not just a monetary phenomenon. It's a belief system. encoded into how every business owner sets next month's price and every worker negotiates next month's wage. And that belief system does not update gradually. It updates all at once, or not at all. If you want to see which country's central bank tries this exact playbook next, and which one is currently failing at it in real time, subscribe now, because we track the mechanism, not the headlines. The reason the freeze worked where gradualist plans in Argentina and Brazil failed around the same period is that expectations only break when the shock is total and simultaneous. A partial freeze leaves one variable, usually wages or the exchange rate, still floating. And that floating variable becomes the escape hatch through which the old inflationary logic re-enters the system. Israel closed every hatch on the same day. Within months, real interest rates, which had been deeply negative, meaning savers were being punished for holding shekels, turned positive for the first time in years. That single shift reversed capital flight into capital return. Money that had been fleeing into dollars and foreign accounts started flowing back because holding shekels finally paid a positive, real return instead of guaranteeing a loss. This is the part that matters for the decade that followed. The credibility earned by the 1985 plan did not, by itself, create Israel's high-tech export economy of the 1990s. That's a separate causal chain, built on defense sector R&D spillover, venture capital infrastructure, and immigration waves of Soviet engineers. But none of that survives inside 400% inflation. Monetary stability was the precondition, not the cause. It removed the constraint. It didn't build the engine. Now, the ledger of who paid. Real wages, once the freeze locked in, were frozen at a level that had already been devalued by the plan's own starting exchange rate. Workers absorbed the adjustment first, before the broader economy had stabilized enough to restore their purchasing power. Public sector employees and anyone on fixed index contracts took the hit immediately, in real time, while inflation was still working its way out of the system. Wages caught up later. The gap in between was not compensated. It was simply absorbed. The Histadrut's cooperation, framed publicly as a national partnership, was functionally coerced. The alternative to cooperation was a currency collapsing faster than any wage negotiation could keep pace with. That is not a voluntary bargain. That is duress dressed in the language of consensus. Import-dependent sectors, meanwhile, adjusted to a currency that had been devalued going into the peg, meaning the cost of imported goods rose before any of the stabilization's benefits reached ordinary consumers. The peg itself was never built to last forever, and it didn't pretend to be. Through the late 1980s, it shifted into a crawling peg, adjusting on a preset schedule instead of holding a single fixed rate. In the 1990s, it widened into a band, giving the shekel room to float within defined limits. By the end of that decade, Israel moved toward a fully managed float and eventually a freely traded currency with no peg at all. The fragility was baked into the original design. It depended on a unity government that won't reconvene on command, US financial backing tied to a specific political moment, and a level of national exhaustion with the old system that cannot be manufactured on demand in a country that hasn't yet hit its own 400%. Any country studying this file and concluding the answer is simply pick a number and peg your currency to it is reading half the mechanism. The peg only held because it was fused to an immediate fiscal shock and a political structure that eliminated the actors who profit from inflation's continuation. Strip away the fiscal cut, strip away the unity government, and what remains is not a cure. It's just a fixed exchange rate waiting for the reserves to run out.